morning, everybody, and welcome to Tales from the Heart, a podcast from the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association. I am your host, Lisa Salberg, and today I am joined by our monthly visitor, Dr. Marty Maron. Marty, welcome to Tales from the Heart.
Hey, Lisa. Always good to be with you.
Always great to have you here. It is November 8th, 2024, and a lot has happened since last you visited Tales from the Heart. Last time we were talking about an upcoming summit and our patient meeting, and there's also been an election. So a lot has happened and a lot more is happening in real time. So today we're going to handle this as a potpourri, and we're going to hit a couple of different topics. So first of all, I'm going to start high. I'm going to start happy. We're going to talk about the summit. And I want to kind of go over a couple of highlights. There's some things I thought were really well covered in the summit, not to mention that the vibe was completely chill and wonderful through the entire event. So I'm gonna ask you, as the co-director and the person who put all the time behind this, what were your favorite highlights from the summit?
First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it today again, because I agree. I thought it went really well from beginning to end. Put a lot of time into trying to create an opportunity that would provide really the chance in a kind of nice environment, as you just said, to exchange ideas and information and to really give people the chance to hear from really all the experts in the world about the contemporary management of the disease. And I have to say first that a huge shout out to a couple people that I have to say thank you first to Emily Lalone, who was our all things HCM summit. I mean, she put together the production of this at the highest level.
She is a meeting goddess.
She is. If anybody needs help with a meeting, Emily alone, you could do no better. And so I want to just thank her and her team. Incredible job. Thank, of course, Steve Ahman, my co-director. We worked hard to put this together. Steve did an incredible job. It was really a lot of fun working with him. And then, of course, my dad, who was responsible for the summit going back now almost 27 years. He started this and we've continued it in the effort of that he envisioned. I think that he wants to see it as, which is an opportunity to deliver, the best information to the practicing community on this disease so that everybody will be able to give patients wherever they may live the opportunity for the two goals, normal longevity and great quality of life for this disease. So I thought it went really well. I had a great time. Highlights, there were so many. I mean, I think, I really enjoyed. So one, I really enjoyed the chance to have discussions with the experts on the panel. Okay. Because I think, that really gave us the chance to kind of go deeper than we usually do in conversations about these complex topics. And so getting people to talk about how they look at, certain issues, their views on certain things, from a management standpoint, what I thought was really insightful and instructive. And I thought a lot of that conversation and discussion on the panels went extremely well and really took the understanding to another level there.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And there's so many nuances to HCM management that sometimes it looks very superficial. Are you obstructed? Are you non-obstructed? And that to some that might be where the decisions end, but it is so much more complicated. And digging into, just different methods of managing obstruction from the thought leaders in the field and good, robust conversation. There's not just one way. There's a lot of different ways to do these procedures, and knowing how and who can handle which anatomy and where their specialties lie. I think it was really helpful to hear the bigger picture of HCM and then see where new meds, new therapies are going to be brought into our toolbox.
Yeah.
And, kind of blending the conversation for the day. The toolbox has been getting filled over the years with more precise therapies. We used to have very imprecise therapies, and we're getting more and more precise. And it's going to be more important than ever to have the ability to do the appropriate workup on each individual patient to ensure that we're choosing the best option for that patient at this time. And that's going to require maintaining access to health insurance for all with pre-existing conditions. And we're going to have to start having some very loud conversations about the importance of upholding that part of our current law to ensure that every patient gets access to health care. So I will step off of that soapbox for a minute. And can you talk about Konstantin from the Ukraine and his contributions to the summit? I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, and so Konstantin Rudenko, Dr. Rudenko, yeah. So just maybe just to put, to back up, to put it in context. So the other thing I was going to say, and this connects with your question, is the other kind of highlight, at least in my view, for the summit was the opportunity to highlight the global contributions here that are going on. I think we often focus, for obvious reasons, a lot on what's going on in our neighborhood here. And, one of the main points about the summit is that this is a global disease, right? I mean, HCM is everywhere. And I think we have to start, really looking at it that way to kind of help to take a lot of these new treatment developments and be able to translate them to patients wherever they may live in the world, so that, as you just said, all patients can have access to great care. And I think part of that is to highlight, as we did at the summit, a lot of the incredible work that's going on in this disease in places that we wouldn't necessarily think about as having HCM initiatives. Okay. And so on Sunday, we took the opportunity to take a deeper dive into that. And we highlighted part of that global experience, a number of different initiatives going on in countries around the world, including Dr. Rudenko, who we'll come back to in a minute, from Kiev in Ukraine. But we also highlighted work that was going on, incredible work that was going on in Iceland, in China, our partners in China, and India. So the two most populous countries in the world, each with, I think, several billion people, had a lot of really interesting things to say about how they're approaching HCM care in both of those countries as well. And so that was, I think, to me, that was sort of really, really, really fascinating. And again, really helps us to start thinking about the global approach here. Now, coming back to Dr. Rudenko, because you called him out and emphasized that because of it's an incredible story. He is a surgeon. He's a cardiac surgeon who I met several years ago. He is from Ukraine. He was born and raised in the Kiev area. And he talked to us about all the things that he's been doing to take care of patients with obstructive HCM in Ukraine by doing the myectomy operation, despite the fact that they have been at war over the last 2.5, 3 years. That the fact that has not stopped him or his team from taking care of civilians and those in the military who have required his skill set and expertise as a surgeon to relieve obstruction, to allow them to achieve a normal quality of life, despite all the incredible pressures of war. It was an incredible story.
You could hear a pin drop as he spoke.
Yeah.
And everybody's face showed the empathy for what his situation is and the awe of him being able to conduct such precise surgery in such circumstances. I was impressed and very grateful that there are people like him in the world doing the good work and helping those who really need it. So hats off to him and his team for continuing to persevere under very unfavorable circumstances. And I hope we don't have to learn any more lessons from him.
Yeah. He was even telling us some, sort of additional stories. Obviously, he's got zillions of stories that he could probably sit down and tell us over, hours and hours. But one of them was this, the idea that there were actually soldiers, obviously the war started very quickly, and a lot of Ukrainian young men were recruited into the army, fairly rapidly. And some of these, he was telling me, were soldiers that once they had been sort of deployed to the front lines, had started to become limited by shortness of breath, okay, and couldn't perform, at the level that they needed to as soldiers. And so they were sent back for evaluation, and a certain number of them were found to have obstructive HCM as the reason that they were short of breath, having chest pain, and essentially weren't able to perform as soldiers on the front lines. And he operated on those patients successfully, reversing their heart failure. And he told me that as soon as they recovered, even before they were recovered, they wanted to go back, and perform their duties. And he was able to allow them that opportunity because of his incredible skill set as a surgeon doing myectomy at the highest level.
There is so much in that statement. And while I'm always somebody who has words for things, to be recovering from open heart surgery and saying, hurry up, let me back in to the war, tells you what's on the state, what's on the line for these people.
Yep.
And why we all need to be listening very carefully to what's happening in the world around us. Pivoting from that, which was a very deep moment, unfortunately, you missed one of my moments of highlight because you were at the faculty dinner, and I understand you had lots of places to be. But at Saturday night at the summit, we were able to reunite one of your former patients, Lisa, the other Lisa from New Jersey, who needed a heart transplant. We reunited her with her donor family, and they were able to have a moment to listen to her donor heart.
Wow.
At the event. I have some great pictures. I'll send them over. It was a very meaningful event because we told the story of how you were Lisa's doc. She would go to Boston, then Jersey, then she was handed off to NYU for transplant, and that the donor actually had passed away at Leahy. So it was tying the whole story together, explaining all of the things that needed to align to bring this moment into reality, all the clinical trials, all the best practices, all of the work that we've all done in understanding HCM and donation. It all came together at the in the Lighthouse Ballroom while you were at the faculty dinner. So we're sorry that you missed that part of it, but it was really amazing.
I'm just happy it all came together like that. That's an incredible connection of the dots. That's amazing, actually.
And it shows how closely we actually all are connected. And sometimes I think it's important that we remember how connected we all are. And that was a great story about it.
So I forgot to mention just a minute ago when I was talking about the global perspective at the summit, we had one of the other additional talk there was an incredible one as well. Dr. Nusu from South Africa.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so that's the first time we've had a perspective on HCM from Africa. And he shed, I thought, was an incredible light on the efforts that he and others there are doing to try to provide care to that population, enormous population of patients in the best way they can, and what they've accomplished and what they're going to accomplish as well going forward is absolutely incredible. So I thought the HCM in Africa was an amazing talk as well.
I think all of the internationals' perspectives, they were, Sunday morning mostly, they were amazing. Mm-hmm. I think the techniques that the Chinese are using in the operating room are really unique and potentially beneficial. I think we need to learn from that experience, and that we need to keep talking globally about how we not only treat these patients, but how we identify these patients. I feel kind of bad that these poor guys in the Ukraine had to find out that they were short of breath and symptomatic while in a state of war. Yeah. And I think this has a lot to understanding, who's at risk for disease and getting screenings done earlier so that we can keep people as healthy as possible for as long as possible. So, just bravo on every element of the summit. I think the agenda was well representative of the constituency serving the patients. I think it met all of the patients' diagnostic and clinical challenges in the highest way possible. And I think we got to do it more often now. I think it's an every other year meeting, but stay tuned for.
Yep. Maybe every other year. Obviously, I think it's too much for every year, but I think every other year may be a possibility. We're going to give that some thought.
Number 9 is my lucky number, so let's see what we can do with number 9.
And you got that Yeti mug. Show everybody that very beautiful Summit 8 Yeti mug.
There you go.
Gave that to everybody, to a lot of fanfare. I think that was well
there,
received.
You can see it that way.
Yeah.
Nice little shout out to Leahy on the back, but it's my first day using my official Yeti. This is my first Yeti mug.
Yeah.
I've been on the discount racks before then, so thanks.
we took you up a level with that then. Good.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. So other things about the summit that I just wanted to take a moment and hit on is your dad's contributions.
Yep.
And there was definitely old Barry sparks coming from the lectern, and it was great to see him in his element and enjoying what he's built.
Yeah.
I was thinking back, and I don't even know if that I brought a camera with me to the first summit because they weren't on your phones then. But it was a small room. There was maybe 60 of us there, and there was actually, a slide reel, with the slides that drop down into it. And there were some animated conversations and debates. And it started there, and it has evolved over the years to be an amazing meeting. And I know people who aren't into these types of meetings are like, a meeting's a meeting. No, a bad meeting really stands out, and a good meeting really stands out.
Yeah. And
this was a very good meeting. So
appreciate that. And the other thing, we talked about this too. I'll just make one other point here too, that I think with the emergence of new drug therapy in this disease, there's been obviously an enormous, and rightfully so, is an enormous amount of focus and attention on that aspect of management. But what I think we've seen too is maybe with that a disproportionate, a level of focus at some moments there, meaning that, one of the things about the summit, and you alluded to this, was that I liked and was proud of, is that we gave the full spectrum of the disease its rightful attention, right? And I think we've lost a little bit of that. At least I think I've seen that in some prior, meetings and initiatives where it seems to come down to only or very little given to other aspects of the management of HCM. And we can't do that. We've got to remember, that this is an entire disease where patients experience a number of different aspects that need to continue to have the same advancements that we've seen that the drugs can provide. So that was, I think, also kind of important aspect here.
So you'll start to see more video content coming out from the meeting in the next couple of weeks from us, so you can see what's going on behind the scenes. So we had great people. Your guy from South Africa, whose name I'm missing right now, he also got on the plane last minute and flew out very quickly because he had a baby 3 days or a day before he left.
Yeah, that was incredible. I mean,
and he showed up.
And he came, and he essentially, delivered an incredible talk and perspective, and then he literally turned back around and went back. I mean, it was just an amazing effort.
He was one person I was trying to catch up with all meeting, and at the end of the meeting, he was literally heading out the door. I'm like, wait, stop, we need to talk.
I know.
And he's like, yes, we need to talk. So we're gonna reach out to him for our HCMA international programming.
Yep.
As well as to all of the participants at the summit, which were from international points of interest. And Marty, you and I are going international in January.
Yeah,
We're going to Latin America.
Yeah, Latin America HCM Summit meeting, which is going to be great. I mean, again, kind of on the same thing, another huge area of the world where it's going to be great to have conversations around HCM as well. And so that I'm really looking forward to January.
That should be fun. Something to look forward to. And hopefully some warmer weather than we would have gotten in the Northeast.
That we can almost guarantee. For sure.
One would hope.
January, right.
It is going to be January. So let's just hope there's planes flying at that time. Okay. We've gone over the summit. We've gone over the patient meeting a little bit. We had a great time, and we're already starting to plan for October 2025. We actually are in talks with ACC New Jersey to put on the med ed component of the meeting again. We haven't done that in a number of years. So October 18th, Morristown, New Jersey. Mark your calendar, set the date. You'll all be in New Jersey at that time, and we'll make an even bigger splash at another meeting because we're going to bring everybody to the table at once again. We've got both of the ballrooms. I'm going to go get all the other rooms. We're going to have the whole hotel for the weekend. So join us, save the date. We'll it's on our calendar right now as a save the date. So agenda to come. So it is a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
It is time to sit with our families again through holiday meals, trying not to overeat because we know large meals aren't good for those with HCM. We're going to try to limit alcohol consumption because holiday heart's a real thing. So from a basic cardiology standpoint, what should patients do with eating during the holidays to make sure that they're not taxing their system too much? Any bright ideas from the guy who's probably down 20 since the last time I saw you?
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been focusing on it now that I had a window of time where I could actually focus on that. It's a great question. I mean, I think there's all kinds of different ways of looking at that. I think, moderation, like everything else is probably the key thing here. I mean, being thoughtful about, volume, obviously. First and foremost is obviously really important, and trying to stay away as much as you can from the sugar and the salt. Sugar and salt, two bad things for all of us, but also obviously for those with heart disease, including HCM. So those are the two areas: sugar and salt and moderation. That's sort of what I have to say if I was to put it in a just nutshell.
So now we're going to hit the other one, and our present families will exclude from this conversation. But when we get the families together, sometimes it's stressful, and sometimes maybe you want to talk about things that they don't want to talk about. Maybe you're going to use this as an opportunity to remind your family about screening their hearts for HCM or trying to get some other kind of message delivered. Holidays can be stressful times for everybody. People who've had a lot of grief in their families, the absence of people is more present at the holidays. So there's some sensitivity. And we're living in a very unusual time with a lot of division. How do we manage stress through the holidays to make our hearts as happy as possible with all of these other factors going on in the world?
I'll fall back on just sort of what works, and has worked, for example, for me and others here in this kind of situation. You have to take care of yourself, and no matter what, but also particularly if you've got heart disease like HCM, you got to take care of yourself here, particularly in moments where there will be stress. And I think one of the things that works for me is you got to balance it, right? I mean, you got to balance it with trying to, be active. You got to, for me, working out, mild to moderate recreational activity where you can kind of sweat out a little bit and kind of, get some endorphins released. And maybe that means yoga. Maybe that means just going for a walk out in the woods for a little bit to decompress and refocus and realign a little bit. There's a lot of power to, just going out, as I just said, for 30-minute, 20-minute walk in the neighborhood or woods, for a gentle hike, get out and get into nature a little bit. And to me, that always helps me as I said, be able to address a lot of the other things that you have to address when you're, in these family gatherings. And so that's what I do. For example, I'll go for a hike, or I'll work out, Thursday morning, Thanksgiving, before, going to dinner, so that, I've had a chance to sweat a little bit. I've released some endorphins. I've had a chance to maybe, for some people that means also meditating, whatever it may mean, but you got to recenter a little bit before engaging. And that's how I think that's worked for me and many people, I think, as well. And that's my advice.
And that's great advice. About 30 years ago, my family started a tradition. We haven't kept it every single year, but sometimes the weather gets in our way. But we take a hike in the woods behind my house.
Yep.
And uniquely, in the woods behind my house is an old abandoned cemetery where my great-grandparents happen to be buried, as well as my great uncles and great aunts and like the whole side of the family in an abandoned cemetery in the mountains. So on Thanksgiving, we walk to an abandoned cemetery in the mountains. Try to do it as a family. With little ones, it's sometimes hard, so not everybody goes every year, but we get as many as we can, and we walk up there, and our destination is an old cemetery, and we always try to find somebody else in the woods, and we typically do, and it's a nice tradition. It gets you moving.
Yep.
You went there with me once, many years ago.
I remember that. Yep.
There was a snake in the path. I remember that.
Yeah.
That was scary. But that's the hike we take every Thanksgiving. And then we have a lot of different eaters in our family. Mm-hmm. We have pescatarians, we have carnivores, we have ketos, we have all kinds of different people. So we try to make sure that there's ample options for everybody to meet their recommended diets or what they choose to eat. And we do encourage low salt in everything that we prepare. So we do talk about like what food options we're going to have, and everybody has a favorite on the table, and it's a very eclectic looking table these years. It's not just turkey and stuffing, although they are definitely there, with mashed potatoes. It's always the argument, is there garlic in the mashed potatoes or not? Right. So those are the conversations. But plan your meals, plan an activity, get some stress out.
Yep.
If you want to broach the topic of talking about your medical issues, don't do it over the dining room table. Take it aside, take it down a notch. We don't want it to be something that scares people. We want to be informative and, hey, here's some information. It's also a great idea to maybe then bring up the genetic aspect and let people know about genetic testing if the vibe is right. When the vibe is not right, just don't bother bringing it up. We'll talk about it another time. Eating in moderation. There tends to be beer and wine around a lot. Can you talk about the impacts on alcohol and HCM and any tips that we can offer as we enter the holiday season on that topic?
The message there is that, that alcohol can, in some situations, possibly increase patients' symptoms. It also can make patients dehydrated, and dehydration obviously also can, increase symptoms and make patients not feel as good. So I think, the message here then, I think, to me comes down to, again, being thoughtful about, the amount of intake, that we're talking about here. I don't think we're saying, no alcohol at all. I think what we're saying is be thoughtful about it. Moderation, again, is the theme. And what's thoughtful also is to keep up with fluids if you're going to have a little bit of alcohol. So kind of chase it with water, in a way. If that's what you want to do. If you don't want to, then of course that's fine as well. But meaning alcohol. But I don't know how you view this, but I don't think that we're saying that it's an absolute no-go, right?
Correct.
Right.
Once we say no, that makes people want things more basic. Somebody tells you no, you're like, no, I want to do that. I used to have a different way of pre-gaming for parties, people from way back in the day.
Yeah.
I pre-gamed by drinking water.
Yeah.
So that I could have fun later. So making sure that you're well hydrated as the days approaching and you're not just showing up at dinner, starting to eat a lot and drink alcohol. Have some fluid in your system. Make sure that you are well hydrated. Drink, then water, drink, then water. So like you swap them out, but keep the fluids going throughout the day. Really important, and will help you feel a little bit better after dinner as well, because you may not eat as much because you're filling yourself with the water as well. Taste everything, watch your portion size. Those are my best tips.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's the most thoughtful way to approach this.
And if in doubt, use your old grandmother's plates, which were smaller than the ones they make today. And then your plate looks fuller when you use a smaller plate. Silly, but it does your mind a nice little trick. We've talked a little bit about preparing for the holidays. We've talked a little bit about the summit, and we've talked a little bit about next year's planning. I'm going off to AHA in 2 weeks or next week. So we won't be podcasting next Friday if you're one of the weekly followers, because I'll be at AHA. I might actually sneak on a podcast on the floor of the AHA if I can manage that.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a new camera set up, and it might actually work a little bit better. Even if we don't put it out live, you might get some snippets from the day from people that visit the booth. We're going to try some new elements of our programming. Marty, in beginning of November 2024, with a lot of unknowns in front of us. Any final thoughts for this Thanksgiving season, this November election season? What are we doing? Where are we going?
I think we're taking a deep breath and reminding ourselves that at the end of the day, it's going to be all right. It's all going to work out. I firmly believe that. It's all going to work out. You got to just take a deep breath. Got to recenter here, stay focused, and take care of yourself.
I think that is an incredibly important reminder. And I want to just take a moment. It is open enrollment time for your health insurance.
That's right.
And it is an important time for anybody with a chronic illness to really take stock of where they have access to acquiring health care coverage and which plan design is best for them. About 2 weeks ago, Jan Berger and I did a podcast, webinar, whatever it was, on the topic. So you can watch it here, or you can catch it on YouTube, wherever you're picking this up. We go through plan design, we go through language, we go up on the style of plan that you're choosing. For those with chronic illness, a PPO is the best option, and Medicare with a supplement is the best option. Medicare Advantage programs have too many restrictions, and HMOs can limit your access to getting to a high volume center. So we definitely recommend that you stick with a PPO if possible, and stick with Medicare and a supplement. If you're already in a Medicare Advantage plan, you can try to get out. Sometimes it becomes unaffordable to come out. And I think everybody needs to wake up and realize what the difference is between Medicare and supplement and Medicare Advantage. They operate very differently. One operates more like a PPO, one operates more like an HMO. And HMOs are not good for access when you have something uncommon going on with you or that you need specialty care for. So please take a moment and really go through your plan documents. Make sure you understand it. Are you looking at your plan documents right now, Marty?
As you were talking, I was looking at mine. I was just going to make the point that, you made a number of good points there, but I was going to make the point that our plan couldn't be more confusing. It's like, come on. Come on. I can't even follow what's going. So your points were good, but like, for example, with an HMO, there are 3 levels.
Yes.
And it's really hard to differentiate, at least to me, exactly what those differences are and how they, are different than PPO exactly. I don't know. I think it's become pretty confusing.
Well, there's another part of this that's even more confusing. And that is, while you may have levels within each type of plan, so an HMO may have different deductible structures and you can pick which one you want. And then the PPO may have the same. PPOs are going to be more expensive than HMOs, hands down. I get it. It's going to be more money.
They're really expensive. They're actually they're really expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. But an HMO is going to limit your access. So you're giving up access by paying a lower premium. So you have to decide what's important to you, but you also have to ask for the formulary on the drug plan. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, those are how they tier them, and that'll tell you how much they're going to pay. But what's in each class? What are you going to be paying for? Is Camzyos on your formulary? If it's not on the formulary, it doesn't mean you can't get it. It means you got to do an appeal, and you may get it, but you may not. On a particular blood thinner, you want to make sure that the one that you're on is on your formulary in a good tiered position, so it's less out-of-pocket money for you. So you could pick a cheaper plan, but if all of your drugs are out of plan, you're going to end up paying more in the long run. If you're not sure what decisions to make, our advocates can stand with you and look at your options and look at your drugs and try to help you pick what's most important element for you. If you need to talk to your human resource department about the plan design, if you need to talk to somebody from the company to understand, you got to know what questions to ask. What drugs are on the formulary, at what tier, and what access do I have to my centers? There are a lot of centers that we're working with that they can't afford to take some of the cheaper HMOs because the reimbursement rates aren't there for them, and they don't have good contracts. Talk to your HCM team. What plans are they accepting coming next year? What plans can't they take anymore? You know, if you're relying upon state insurance, anything in the Medicaid system, we're safe for 25 in terms of funding because that funding's already been established. But I don't know what state funding is going to have for Medicaid going forward. We don't know. We need to make sure people have access to healthcare now, and that you pick a good plan for 2025 and you get your health optimized and you get all the tests done and you get all the therapies on board that you can today. And then we fight for access to healthcare for tomorrow to make sure that you can maintain that.
Yeah, super important messages. Super important. So, well said.
It's a little bit uncertain right now, and I'm fielding a lot of messages from people saying, well, what do I do now? What's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen to healthcare. I don't have a magic ball here that I can look in the crystal ball and see what's going to happen. But I can tell you there's going to be changes. They're not all going to be good changes, but they might not all be bad changes. We don't know yet. So we must use our voices to explain why this is important to not only us as individuals, but to the economy in whole. We want to stay in the workplace. We want to stay paying our taxes. We want to be normal people. We don't want to be disabled.
Yep.
So help us stay healthy with good health policy.
Yep. Well said.
Marty, you got work to do there at Leahy. You've got patients waiting on you. I thank you for your time today. Give my best to the entire team up there. And again, bravo on the summit. Can't wait for number 9.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Always good to talk to you. Have a good weekend. We'll connect soon.
The Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association thanks the following sponsors for today's podcast: Cytokinetics, Bristol Myers Squibb, BioMarin, Tenaya Therapeutics, Viz AI, and Alnylam.